Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Labyrinth Kickstarter Discord AMA. This is the inaugural AMA that we do at the beginning of every Kickstarter, and today we are talking about both the Labyrinth Worldbook as well as the Labyrinth Adventures, alongside the very special and all new for us Labyrinth GM Vault in partnership with Beetle and Grimm. My name is Zach Newbill. My pronouns are he, they. I'm the community manager here at Discord, and I am going to go ahead and pass it on to all of the amazing creators that are helping put this book together. Wolfgang, do you want to talk a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah, Wolfgang Bauer, founder at Kobold Press, him and instigator of this thing. I can tell you about the deep, dark origins of how this project ever got off the ground, because I thought it would never happen. But first, I want to introduce my co-conspirator and senior game designer, Celeste Conowitch.
Oh, hey, everybody. My name is Celeste Conowitch, pronoun she, her. I am the senior game designer at Kobold Press and one of the designers on this here book. Specifically, getting you those sweet player options is one of my prime jobs on this. So happy to be here. But this wouldn't be possible without our third conspirator calling in from all the way around the world at 11 o'clock at night. Richard.
Hi, yeah, so I'm Richard Green. I'm a freelance designer. I've worked for Kobold Press for quite a long time now, I think. And I designed some of the core worlds and some of the factions and also some of the player options for the Labyrinth Worldbook. And it is very exciting to be able to talk about it, having kept very quiet about it for a very long time.
Months and years, and how long has it been?
Yes. About a year, I think. Nearly a year, I think.
For me, longer. All right, I'm going to give this short little bit about the project we killed to give birth to the Labyrinth. There was a project, tell this a different way. We really wanted to do Tales of the Valiant, but we had to spike something that was already in design at the time. It was a thing called Grimoire of the Void. It had designers, it had art, it was this wonderful dark pantheon of stuff. And we pulled it off the schedule and we looted it for parts. And so some of the monsters and some of the void factions and some of the darker elements of the labyrinth come straight out of the Grimoire of the Void. Yeah, we had to sacrifice that project to make this one.
Honestly, that is very in the spirit of Grimoire of the Void, though. Like, we're truly sacrificing it to make something greater.
Right? We had some, fun dark magic.
Yeah.
We had some cool art. We had, oh my God, character concept art, something we'd never done before.
For the factions. Oh man, that was great. Oh.
Yes.
And we used it all.
We did. Oh yeah, we left in the manner of designers everywhere. We shoved it into a drawer for 6 months to go work on other things. We came back and said, hey, free word count. And and quickly found new homes for it. And actually it fit in beautifully because it's all part of the Kobold Press continuity and cosmology.
Yeah, so you speak about the continuity, Wolfgang. That's actually one thing I wanted to ask you guys heading into this, because I had a lovely conversation with Richard a little while back, and he talked about just the multi-year labor of love that has culminated to the Labyrinth Worldbook. Can you kind of talk about like how the book kind of like started and where like Midgard plays a part in this, and really how long this has become a process that's coming just now to fruition.
Sure. And I know Celeste and Richard have been part of this, but basically the Void, Labyrinth, Midgard, like this builds on Kobold Press canon going back 18 years or 17 years, right? Void magic has always been lurking around the edges of Midgard. Things like the Ur dragon Nidhogg gnawing at the world tree's roots is a familiar concept. And shadow roads and pathways and portals from this world to another, those are all flavors and notes that we've hit at Kobold Press over the years. And Richard, you've planted as many of those kind of seeds as anyone in Midgard. But the idea here for the Labyrinth was, well, what if it was just bigger than Midgard? What if it was a lot bigger than Midgard? What if there were a lot of worlds, and what if there were passages between them?
Yeah, so big in fact that Midgard would be a world inside of this like meta universe.
Yes.
That's how big it is, right?
Right? Like every time people say you're abandoning Midgard, I'm
It's
like,
like
it's
absolutely
core
not.
world
It's right
number
there.
one.
We can point to it on the map.
It's on the Labyrinth map. People come from Midgard into the Labyrinth and vice versa. So yeah, absolutely. But at the same time, we wanted other things we stole from the Void, and sort of the greatest hits of Kobold Press in terms of locations, right? Our most popular worlds and planes. There's a bunch here on the Summerlands and the Shadow Realm. And Richard, your own homeworld is part of the Labyrinth. Do you want to spill the beans on that
Yeah,
just a
so
notch?
yeah, so I think 10 years ago I published a book called Parsantium City at the Crossroads, which was a city source book, and the kind of wider world has been incorporated into the Labyrinth. So it's one of the core worlds that features in the book, which is really, really exciting. And it's great to be able to bring that
I
to a
love it that
bigger
it's
audience.
yeah, it's your homeworld is one of the first people exploring the labyrinth might discover, but the whole idea of the labyrinth is anyone can bring their homeworld,
Mhm.
right? Like it's
Exactly.
easy to slot in your existing campaign, and if you want to go visit Midgard for a minute or visit Parsantium, or oh, I don't know, if you're really aggressive and need to visit the Hells or cruise down the Styx, you can. Um, the labyrinth makes all those things easy with mechanics and subclasses and plots. So
I
many
think
plots.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite
Yeah.
things about this book is not only are there so many like rich core worlds and there's just an open invitation to slot in your home world, but we've also built basically its own world kind of in the
Oh
space
yeah.
between, right? So it feels like such a cool way to shift in and out, like dealing with the politics of like what does it mean to be in between these worlds? What are the problems facing, the
Yes.
tissue between all worlds, and then also the problems facing individual worlds. There's just so much to explore and so many avenues that, you can take if you want to set a campaign here. It's really incredible.
And we have places like the Smithy, so there's a city that's like actually in the labyrinth rather than on
Right.
one of the worlds, that is where one of the factions is headquartered, and lots of the other factions have bases there. And I think the heroic and the villainous factions kind of help tie it all together.
Oh yeah.
And they pop up in different worlds,
Yeah.
causing trouble or saving them from the void.
Yeah, I love that the factions have sort of different like areas of influence, right? Because some of the factions operate only on specific worlds, and then some on the far other end like don't even bother going to worlds, right? They just like sit in places like the Smithy, in between everything. So you really do have a full range of whatever kind of stories you want to tell by interacting with these various factions.
So
Yeah.
I've got my questions written down, and I definitely don't want us to derail, but we've brought up the factions, and I just have to ask, right? Because for
Derail
anyone,
number one. Go for it.
yes, derail number one. For anyone who's read Guide to the Labyrinth, some of the factions are featured within that book, and they are just so cool. They're captivating. I've slowly told Wolfgang in meetings week over week how I'm like peering through that book and just becoming more and more addicted.
Yay.
What is
Yay,
your
good.
guys' personal favorite heroic or villainous faction?
Oh.
Well,
This is
obviously,
the classic.
I'm a little biased to loving the Keepers because I did make the new Mechanist class in TOV, and there's a lot of Mechanist influence and flavor, I think, in the Keepers. So I'm a little biased on that heroic faction, and I've already spilled that I love the Great Chantry of the Void Mother because honestly, she just has the coolest hat in the entire world. So that's
It's all about the hat.
How to win
so
Celeste's
that's
heart, have
it's
a
all
cool
about the
hat.
head war. That's how you know someone is important and powerful based on the size of their hat. So,
Yeah,
yes.
that's fair.
It's true.
I think my favourite's the Last Cathedral, which are the two undead brothers, so the King of the Death Knights and the Lich King, and they're based out in this ruined temple and in a kind of deep in the void on a sort of demi-plane, and they kind of send their undead armies to sort of basically terrorize the labyrinth. And they are kind of trying to erase the goddess Solana completely from existence, and then also destroy all life across all worlds. So they're not very nice.
Oh, and they're attached to the Cold Forge, which is just the world you've
Yeah.
just like built, one of the core worlds, and the Cold Forge is so cool. I can't wait to send my adventurers to
Right?
such
You
a
know
hellish
they're going to
place.
volunteer to
You
go
know they're
because
gonna
the
go
treasures, they're just everywhere. Surely you can
everywhere. You're just waiting for someone to pick them up. No worries.
Absolutely.
I'm going to pick a heroic because you picked the villainous one, Richard, and you picked both, Celeste. So I'm going to go for heroic, the elders, the old ring, who started off as just, world tripping druids and rangers and the minotaurs who found the labyrinth long ago, and kind of blossomed in design into, well, they're the keepers of the world trees and they're growing new worlds, and they're very patient,
Mhm.
and they're very much a group that every woodsy elf and every ranger will feel at home with. They're also friends to giants and dragons, and if you ever get on their wrong side, you are finished.
Yeah.
You are done. When the elders finally show up and say, "What's this mess?" It's over, right? Like, they're gonna fix it. So it's a fun faction because 'cause they're so patient until they're
Yeah,
not.
and I also feel like the more I read about, the elders of the Old Ring, I feel like they hold so many secrets and they're
Oh,
like
yes.
okay with that, right? Like all the other factions struggling, they're new, they're up doing their business, but the elders are like, no, we're good over here doing exactly as we've done before, and the ages will change, but we will remain, and that's just very cool.
Yeah. It's a great
Um,
question, Zach. We all have favorites.
yes, okay. Derail number 1 concluded.
We've done
Alright,
it.
but let's take some of the questions
Excellent.
out of chat because there's so
Yes.
many.
Oh my gosh, yes. So I'm gonna ask this first one right here. This is sort of just a bookkeeping question. The ratios of the book, player options, lore, monsters. What are we looking percentage-wise? I know we answered it before, but I want to get it officially on recording, so that way folks can have that kind of
Well,
information.
Celeste or Richard, you
It
can correct me.
is
We all looked at this outline a million times.
meaty.
Yeah, it's a meaty book in the world book.
Yeah.
Uh,
I would say, I mean, there's got to be as much like player option content, maybe slightly less than lore, but I don't know. All at the same time, it's great. And then our monster chapter is pretty hefty too. I think people are going to be really pleased by the split between like lore and then player options, and then also some nasty GM tricks for sure.
yeah, and the other nice thing about, I mean, the split is probably 30% player options, 30% lore, and
Mhm.
30% really GM-focused stuff, and then I don't know where the other 10% go, somewhere the pages between.
Yeah.
Um,
The fold.
but yes. The the way stuff is interconnected, the time we had to do sort of deeper design over a longer period
Yeah.
means that the monster lore is nicely tied to faction lore.
Mhm.
The
And the
adventure
worlds,
seeds are
right?
well
Yeah.
tied to the worlds. And the adventure book, which we haven't talked about much, but the Labyrinth Adventures book is 10 adventures that, you can run through the labyrinth, or you can just dip your toe in if you'd rather for one installment. Um, they all tie tightly to one or the other factions. Everybody's represented. You visit a variety of worlds, right? And time in the labyrinth. Um, so it feels really cohesive and unified in a way that sometimes setting design does, and
Mhm.
sometimes it kind of sprawls all over the place.
I think
I mean,
with the fact that we
oh,
had them. Oh, sorry, go on.
I was just going to shout out Richard. Like, one of the coolest things we got to do is like, yeah, we have player options that, could be used independently of the labyrinth setting, but we actually had the opportunity to make some custom player options geared towards the lore and the factions. Like, so Richard put together some really cool options in that chapter. Do you want to talk a little bit about those faction specific things?
Yeah, so we've got so some of the heritage is tied to the factions or to the different core worlds. So there are 6 new heritages, and then amongst the backgrounds there are 2 sort of more general ones. There's a cult escapee and a wanderer, but there are also 4 backgrounds that are specifically tied to the heroic factions. So that you can actually, if you want to be part of the Concord of Stars and kind of root your character in that, then you can be a Concordant Guard, or you can be a Grove Warden if you want to be an Elder, or a Portal Writer if you want to be a Keeper, or a Visionary if you want to be a servant of the Dreaming God. You can kind of root yourself in those factions, or you could have been thrown out of the faction for upsetting them, but that's where you started off. And that's fun. And I was going to say that the fact that we were having our monthly design meetings over the last sort of year, basically, that kind of allowed us to tie everything together really well, and it was really fun to do it that way.
Yeah, it was so nice too, because I mean, this is absolutely a setting that is driven, by the people in it. So factions do play a huge role. So it's so nice that we have those player options. And then we also were able to build in tools with some of the stuff, the additional rules introduced in the Game Master's Guide, which you all will be seeing very soon. But we have like a really robust status system that we use in this book. So we have like guidelines for if you want to engage in those faction politics, if you want that to be a major part of your game, you absolutely have tools to earn favor or, piss off factions as you go along. And it really does change the world and how NPCs will react to your character. So I feel like that's one of the most exciting things we were able to do because we were all so cohesive with the design of this book.
For sure. I have seen quite a few questions that are based around Guide to the Labyrinth, the PDF that we released kind of like as a teaser to this. Just to clarify on the previous question, guys, this book has been like a labor of love that's preceded that PDF. So that was more so a teaser for what is coming rather than this full Kickstarter building.
A 72-page teaser.
Yes, a 72-page teaser. I do want to get into a Kickstarter-related question, though, Wolfgang. Someone asked, we've seen with the campaign builders and more recently with the Game Master's Guide, maps and a map folio being a part of the Kickstarter. Are there going to be any maps within the Labyrinth Kickstarter?
Oh, absolutely. There are beautiful, beautiful maps, including a map of the Labyrinth itself and its
it's
worlds.
So pretty.
A map of the smithy that we talked about as the headquarters, or the bottled city within the Labyrinth, and maps of certain worlds. But at some point, most of our map efforts went to the adventures. There's some beautiful, evocative maps for the Labyrinth adventures, which are more tactical, of course, and more regional. But there's a big map push on this. I believe special versions of those maps and expanded versions of some of those maps are part of Beetle and Grimm's plan for the GM Vault, the Labyrinth GM Vault. But there is not a map folio in the style that the question is about, right? Like the campaign builder ones, you get the 12 maps and they're all poster sized. We're not doing that for this one because we decided to do the adventure book instead.
Yes. And then a question from Merrick here in Discord. What are the chances that some of the areas in the Labyrinth are somewhat similar to hit popular media phenomenon? They mentioned the back rooms, and I'm sure we can think of many others that people would like to see. What's the chances on those sort of similarities?
I mean,
a lot of flavors.
Yeah, there are a lot of flavors, and to some degree, it's whatever you want to put into the many worlds, right? I don't think I want to give away all the core worlds at this point, but several of them are familiar to any Kobold Press fan, right? Like, you're going to know these places. And a bunch of them are brand new. So, I don't know, if you really wanted to put laser swords in your game and suddenly you get dropped on Tatooine, we can't stop you, but, that's an IP violation we can't condone.
I think people are going to be pretty happy with the array of worlds that we have in here, just even amongst the core worlds. Like, I think we have a lot of different flavors of fantasy in this.
Oh, yeah.
So whatever it is that media you love, whether it's, your gritty, more realistic, low magic worlds, or whether it's your high fantasy, or it's a little, magitech. I think we've got a lot that are going to please all manner of folks.
For sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
I think they're all really different. Yeah.
So we have a question here from Jack Kellum. I'm gonna modify the question a little bit just to clarify. Other than our Lord and Savior David Bowie, what would you say is your biggest inspiration in terms of fiction for the Labyrinth?
Oh, I know the answer to this. I put together a list of all the Labyrinth inspiration from TV, film, and novels, but the one touchstone that probably started this line of thinking more than any is the Roger Zelazny Nine Princes of Amber, or the Amber Chronicles, which is a very old sci-fi book about multiple worlds and how people live lives in more than one place, right? But I don't know. I think all three of us have different touchstones when it comes to sort of world hopping.
I think for me, something I kept thinking about was probably Stephen King's Dark Tower series, like the way, this kind of
Yeah.
spindle between worlds and realities. Um, and then especially too, also in specifically the Wheel of Time series, like the ways, uh, these kind of like liminal spaces that connect things and have like this dark influence going on. Like those were two touchstones I thought about quite a bit in this process, but there are certainly many more.
Wheel of Time. Yeah, I like it. That's a good connection. Richard, do you have one as well, or you already
I,
stolen
I,
it?
yeah, I guess Planescape probably in my head. I think, I think
Sure.
I think that was probably the main thing. But I've always run like campaigns in like loads of different settings and jump from one to the other, and use things like those. In a Mordenkainen's Fantastic Adventure, there's a kind of thing where you have to collect all these different triangles and put them into a star on the ground in the dungeon. And if you do that, each one opens a different portal. And I had an adventure where everyone had to go around and gather all of those so they could go to all these different worlds. So I could run an adventure in the Forgotten Realms and one in Greyhawk and one in Eberron and all of that. So that also, that whole portal thing. So yeah,
Yeah.
probably those two things. But
I
yeah,
love any
I love
yeah.
world hopping. Absolutely
Yes,
love
right?
it.
Any of those fictions about like just these kind of hubs in reality, right? Where you can access so many different places at once. I just thought of another one, The Chronicles of Narnia, the very first like book, with the
Narnia's in
pools
there.
Wardrobe,
connected to every
wardrobe.
world, right? Yeah.
There's a lot of these books sprinkled around, and some of them go back a long, long way,
Mhm.
and some of them are very modern multiverse properties. But we had those in mind, and we tried to optimize it for tabletop as opposed to optimizing it for the screen. Like,
Right. Yeah.
Time Bandits came back to Netflix recently, and it's delightful, but to some degree, it's about following intrepid adventures on screen, and we're trying to make sure that the heroes have all these tools and options and tricks in the labyrinth that make them the focal point.
I want to call back to a comment that you guys had made earlier. So we talked about like the heroic and the villainous factions, but Richard specifically mentioned like the Last Cathedral and the Death Knights and them trying to wipe out Solana. For those who don't know, Solana is one of the deities within the labyrinth. And I want to ask a question from one of our Kobold Creates partners here, RPG Familiar. How do deities work within the labyrinth? They talk about
Ah,
having capable pantheons, but do any of them overlap? Like how deep and interconnected do these pantheons get within the setting?
all right. So I wrote the Pantheon chapter because just try and stop me,
Yeah,
but
I know you love doing it.
I do. Um, and what happens here, of course, is there's a pantheon for the labyrinth, and then there's a dark gods pantheon, which is for the void. Um, and the labyrinthine pantheon we actually published in the Guide to the Labyrinth, right?
Hmm.
And I believe a shorter version of it is in the Player's Guide, right?
Yeah,
Pretty
yeah.
sure
So we
it's
did
yeah.
have it was one of our recommended, oh hey, in the back of the book, you trying to pick a god for your cleric buddy? Here's some.
Here's
So
some
it was the
things.
first real spoiler, I think, for this book.
Right, but there's a bunch of additional lore here. Obviously, this is an expanded version in the
Mhm.
the Labyrinth Worldbook, and the Dark Gods get a whole lot of play. And some of them will be familiar to Midgard fans, and some of them are brand new for the Labyrinth because there are certain things that are extra terrorizing uh, the Labyrinth context, among them the Void and how that works, and the rulers of certain areas of the near Void or the deep Void. And they have connections to our villainous factions, right? Like I think the Great Chantry and the Servants of Nidhogg, maybe?
Yeah, definitely.
Have certain dark god connections that well, heck, can we spoil the Void Angels? I guess we can.
There's a picture of one on this.
I was gonna say it's on the graphic. It's in the previous
It's on the
PDF.
graphic. It's hard not to, right? Like, but there's new servitors for the dark gods. There's new powers and delights for the heroic clerics and others. So, and the pantheon isn't meant to be universal for all worlds and all times. The question was sort of like, do they overlap? Do they echo? And absolutely they do. The pantheon chapter addresses this, like, how do they appear in certain worlds? Are they reduced in power? How are they carried from place to place? And there's a discussion of that, how culture travels across worlds. And I probably can't do it justice in 2 minutes, but I recommend Chapter 6, Pantheons, to you.
We have a question from Merrick here that they say, of the new player options, will there be anything cooking related? I kind of want to dungeon meshy some monsters. Before you answer, Celeste, I do want to also call out that we are having a blog series that's coming out soon that is inspired by that anime. So
good. I love that.
You will be getting some dungeon meshy inspired TOV content soon, free on the blog. But Celeste, I'll pass it off to you.
Well, I don't know if we have anything like very specific to what you're looking for, but we do have, I mean, like Wolfgang mentioned, the elders from the Old Ring, they're like uber druids, right? So if you want to talk about produce, bring in that game. Wow, do we have that for you? Because also, this book is a lot about the world in between worlds. So having to survive in an Escher-like reality demands a lot of good magic and ways to feed people, and that is actually a very big problem that our factions have to contend with. So I think if your heart is true and you want those stories to be a big part of the Labyrinth, I think you'll be able to do that with very little trouble.
Amazing. We have a question from Horseling Legacy here, and they said, maybe a weird question, but will there be any world-specific things regarding the toolkits? I would love to hear some more about this sort of stuff when getting deeper into player option.
Oh man, I'll say not quite tool. Well, tools are part of vehicle maintenance. You have to have the good tools to be able to fix things and perhaps build some of the cool magic tech that might be appearing in this world. So if you love vehicles, if you love portals, if you like making weird clockwork stuff with your tools, I think you're going to be really happy with this book.
Yes.
Wolfgang, I feel like you'd be able to navigate this answer better than I. We did the clarification earlier, but Grey Links asks, will there be a narrative, quote-unquote, bridge of Guide to the Labyrinth to this new Labyrinth book, or is it treated as a separate version?
Oh, yeah. Guide to the Labyrinth was really our 72-page teaser to the setting, which was almost or possibly entirely rules-free, right? It was all lore. It was, what's it about? Who are these people? What do they care about? The Labyrinth Worldbook takes that and, well, you'll recognize the places and the people, but our direction here has been, let's put all the rule mechanical underpinnings in, let's throw in a swath of monsters, and let's generate a first wave of adventures so you can play. There's not really a bridge of like, here's the guide and here's the final, but Guide to the Labyrinth is where we were at that time. And we've just expanded rapidly with the three of us doing, the design and a bunch of other people brought in on the adventures. I don't know. I think the way to put it, right? Like Richard, the guide was sort of the outline for this book.
Yeah, I think that's right. So the core worlds have got maybe like a short paragraph in the guide, and those all got expanded into much bigger entries. And I think the Void factions have I think 2 of them are in there, but not the Servants of Nidhogg, and they've all got expanded. The Void itself, there's loads more on that.
Yeah, and we've got
the Void was
mechanics
plus all the
barely
mechanics.
patched.
all
Mechanics and
mechanics.
everything.
What does it actually mean to go to the Void? It's a terrible place. So how
Yeah.
do you survive there? We had to obviously clarify and make sure that GMs and players were well equipped to be able to, go stomp some evil in a plane that's basically chaos and nightmares. And,
Absolutely.
death. So.
A question I have, because we kind of talked about how easy it is to implement like your world into the labyrinth and really just make this like a greater part of your campaign. How easy, or how does the book, make implementing your current world into the labyrinth as smooth and easy as possible?
I think you just have to decide where you want how you want someone characters to be able to get there. So I mean, it's quite interesting doing it for Parsantium because that was obviously written with no connections to Labyrinth, and I put some connections in, and again with Midgard as well, going back to that and kind of putting some stuff in, saying where it connects to the wider
and
Labyrinth.
the world trees of Midgard were a big obvious hook for us, but there's other ways as well. Yeah,
and the River Styx.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time, I guess I spent a lot of time, these guys built some beautiful hooks all over the place for me to work on and develop, because we wanted a lot of different ways for people to be able to engage. So there's quite a bit of mechanical to start, like what are portals? Who can make portals? What are the different types of portals? What is a rift versus a portal, right? And then what do these passageways actually look like? How do you actually get there? What are the 4 different ways to travel, or, the 3 different ways to shortcut? There's a lot of time and effort given to that. So to make it basically as easy as possible for whatever, story you're telling, how to bridge the gap with those elements.
Amazing.
Yeah.
There's a whole chapter on running campaigns, and it does include information.
About portals and all the weirdnesses and all the challenges, and then a big dedicated section too to talking about how do spells that interact with planar travel, how do those function with Labyrinth? We answer a lot of questions, I think, that people will be asking and eager to know as they plan these campaigns.
Amazing. Merrick asks, and I'm going to ask this one because 4 question marks. A lot of people really want to know. And we've seen some of the art come through for this recently, Wolfgang, and I'm super excited about it. Can you talk a bit about the magic items? Are there any fabled ones? I know that there's a lot of ones that are tied to the lore. Let's hear about that.
Some cool fabled ones I'm very excited about.
Right, there are some cool fabled ones. I don't think we want to say more than they exist, but they are very cool. Celeste, you had a couple of those ideas very early on in the development. We got to weave some of the fabled items into the lore pretty deeply. There's also items, and I love these in particular, that are meant for the villains, right? Because often we think about magic items as treasure for players, but I wanted there to be void magic items that would show up in the hands of the wrong
people
side. Yes.
Or just innocent bystanders. I was reading through some of these and I'm like, what if a commoner got this? What a nightmare.
On this thing. Yes.
And maybe that's the plan, I don't know. Oof. Yeah,
but yes, plenty in that category of items and fabled items.
Yeah, I really wanted to give a nod to that because art on some of those things. You guys will see it when the book comes out. Oof. The art in this book as a whole, we cooked.
Oh, it's fantastic.
We cooked, guys. I don't know if we want to commit to this, Wolfgang, but I know we talked about it's a pretty even split. But Grey Links asks about page count. Do we have a rough page count that we want to provide, or no?
I think we have a total page count before stretch goals.
I think we're going to post it on the page.
I think we're posting it on Monday. The moment the Kickstarter goes live, maybe we share it here. I know. We'll do the combined word. I think it's, if you combine the adventures without any stretch goals together with the world book without any stretch goals, and boy, do we have some stretch goals. I think we're well over 400 and I don't know what, 400 and something pages.
And I'm worried that we're not going to be able to fit everything in the page count, but that's always what I'm worried about, you know.
Well, we can always cut no, I don't wanna. I want this to be a big, beautiful. Well, it's somewhere in between. Like, I don't think it's gonna hit the Midgard Worldbook page count.
Oh, Midgard
No,
was
it's 400 pages for 2 books there,
for, yeah,
Wilson, but
but
yes,
combined across those, yeah.
across 2. But I think the Adventures is, yeah, no, it's also beefy. We haven't talked about it much here, but really, there is a lot of meat in there, and there's a lot of easy to drop in. Just open a portal in your home game, and there you are in adventure number 1, 2, 3, whatever suits your party. Yeah, no, it's beefy, and I don't think, even with all the stretch goals, I don't think this one will be as big as the Midgard Worldbook.
That's the biggest book ever. Nobody should hold
It is
that.
the largest book we
No.
ever published.
It's great. It just hurts my back.
470, 460. It's a stupid number of pages,
It's a
and we
big
won't do
book.
that again. But
Well, you two wrote it. I mean, Richard and Wolfgang contributed to that
with
that
plenty of
monster.
help.
So, woof.
Yes. But I think that one is honestly a little too big to get your brain around it in
Yeah.
one section, right? So that's why it's broken into regions. I think the Labyrinth is a little more accessible, and all the player options in it and all the sort of juicy mechanical bits are delightful to use pretty much anywhere. But
Anywhere, even regardless of if you're playing in a Labyrinth campaign or not.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Oh, right. If you're playing in any liminal campaign, I heard there was a drinking game in chat about how often we say liminal. So I'm
What?
yes,
Amazing.
I'm afraid to.
Do I
Liminal,
need to say
yes.
if I could say liminal now as well.
Wait, so liminal?
Yeah, see. Not subliminal.
No, just liminal.
Just liminal.
And everybody is toasted.
Yep. Hey, it's Friday night. Let's let them have their fun.
Chat is lively.
I have a question here.
Luminal. That's the word I was looking for.
Talking more about favorites, right? And I know designers hate answering these favorite questions, guys. So please keep asking them because I love making them cry. Bucko 1101 asks, what is your favorite part of the Labyrinth? I'm going to assume here they mean like your favorite sections, like the Astral Sea, the World Tree, all those sorts of things.
Or a world, I guess.
Yeah,
because it's all
core
the
world,
Labyrinth.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
What's your favorite part?
Oh.
That's so big. There's so many things to pick from.
Well, I know Richard's going to pick Parsantium, so I won't pick that. I think Cold Forge is kind of my favorite.
Cold Forge is very cool.
Because it's dwarfy, it's dark, it's a bad idea for players, but they're gonna go anyway. It's everything I love about it. Yeah. Although the other favorite part for me is the near void, right? Where things have just gotten a little wibbly, but you're not completely doomed yet.
In the the awful spaces. Yeah, I think the more time I spend thinking and designing for the Labyrinth, I'm increasingly drawn to the spaces in between. So I imagine that when I start my Labyrinth, home campaign, I think my players are going to have to spend a lot of time in the pathways and the bottled cities that exist between worlds. I love how much we've set up because even the people living in the Labyrinth, like in the spaces between, really don't know that much about it because it is so big and nobody has ever found the edges, and so much has existed and no longer does, or maybe it still does, or it's hidden. And like just the whole idea of exploring those secret caverns and finding the new pathways in between things and what those weird spaces look like, I think it's just so fascinating to me. So the stuff in between, and then once again, because Mechnus, I'm obsessed. The Keepers are my favorite. So the Smithy, it's such a cool city, just in the heart of nowhere, really. And I'm fascinated by everything going on there.
I'm not going to pick Parsantium because that would be cheating. So I'm gonna pick one small one and one big one. So the small place, is the Bubbler's Well, which was like a short, short couple of lines that Wolfgang put in the guide to the Labyrinth. And I decided that the Bubbler was a kind of weird toad guy, and that the Dreamers would lick him. to have visions.
Richard, it was a
left.
total throwaway, and you made it completely cool and a questing pilgrimage site.
I think we've got Bubbler's sweat as a magic item.
We do, yeah. I made you a bunch of magic items of what you can do if you harvest the sweat from this thing, what you can distill it into.
They have to lick a toad. They have to lick a giant toad monster. So that's one of them.
Perfect example of the way stuff got richer and more interesting as we bounced it around.
We talked about it, yeah.
And then the bigger places, the Dreamers Islands, which again have got only a very short line or two in the Guide to the Labyrinth, but they're these sort of tropical islands and coral atolls on the shore of the Astral Sea, where the servants of the Dreaming God kind of dream of new worlds, and then they have to race into the Astral Sea to kind of get to them before the Infernals get to them and do bad things.
Yes, the Infernals always do bad things.
The Bubbler also got some love in some of the monsters we made. We made a specific kind of Bubbler servant who basically they're just there to make sure everyone has a great heckin' party. So I imagine they're all over the islands, just ensuring, it's always a good trip, bro.
Excellent.
All the things that we liked got deepened and expanded, and Bubblers, well, man, if you look for it in the Guide to the Labyrinth, you're like, what? You'll see a different view in the Worldbook. Yeah.
So
what else we got? We got more questions?
Yeah, I want to call out this specific question from Merrick. They said they notice how we've been speaking about some of the lore within the book, and they've noticed both Hellenistic and Nordic references. And they're asking about some equivalents. So they're specifically, I want to call this out because of a specific 48-hour reward we have. But is there an equivalent to Charon from the Greek mythos and Fenrir from Nordic mythos?
There's certainly ferrymen.
Yeah, definitely.
We've already said River Styx is here. Don't worry.
We said the River Styx is here.
Is he in the Pantheon, Charon? The River Styx is definitely there.
And we haven't really talked about a minor faction that has to do with the Styx. And maybe we save that for another discussion. But absolutely yes on Charon. There's that Hellenistic side is there. And how can you have a labyrinth without at least some reference to crossings
or some cool magic
passages.
Boats in the vehicle section?
Yes,
I don't know.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I think you do.
Tied it together there. Fenrir's tougher. Fenrir's a lot tougher.
I feel like if we were going to mention Fenrir, it would be in another place within Midgard.
It could be in Midgard. It could be... I mean, if I were to pull on that thread for the labyrinth, I would go to somewhere in the void or the roots of the world tree, right? And see if the servants of Nidhogg have some kind of plot around
about Nidhogg, so don't.
We do. So those Norse notes are there. But I don't think we have anything specific in that yet. And I'm trying to remember if it shows up in any of the adventures, but I don't think it does.
Gotcha. This person is very new to the Discord. I'm sure you don't recognize their name. Kim Weiler asks...
Welcome, Kim. Welcome aboard.
Our sales manager, for people who don't get the joke or recognize the name. Will there be guidance on ways to play villainous NPCs for GMs, kind of like what we saw in Deep Magic 2? Wolfgang has really been praising those villains.
Yeah.
Villains.
Well, like I said, we do have a whole section about status and how to get on the good side or the bad side of every faction in this book, including the villainous faction. So I think that is surely a choice. There are certainly guidelines, and Wolfgang and Richard both did a great job. The faction write-ups in this book are just absolute chef kiss. I think this is probably the best and most comprehensive faction book that KP has ever put out, or maybe even what's out there today. I think there's a lot of really clear and solid guidance for running these factions, whether heroic or villainous.
Right. Yeah, the villains are always more fun to write, but the heroes are more fun at the table. Yeah, nothing to add to that. Accurate.
Alrighty. I'm gonna ask this question one because it is so deeply obscure. I don't even know it. I from GM Toolbox, one of our many Midgard deep divers. He says, for, sorry, I just got here. It feels like we have been maybe getting some long-standing questions about Midgard answered with the Labyrinth. For example, in the PDF we already have, I know I saw the Summerlands in there. Does this mean that the Summerlands is not on the flip side of the Midgard disc, but its own world that the elves reached via the Labyrinth?
I'm glad you asked. There has long
Went over
been-
my
oh
head.
my god, way to the deep cuts. Thank you. Summerlands have traditionally, there's been two interpretations, right? One is either the Summerlands or the Shadow Realm are on the flip side of the flat Earth of Midgard, and the other is no, it's a fairy realm. It's somewhere else. You need to travel to another world through a portal someplace. And over the years, this bit of canon has been gnawed at and chewed on by, a council of wise canon elders, by one-time freelancers who show up to a thing and leave, by editors who didn't know about the canon. And it's like, it's a little bit of badminton. Where are the Summerlands? And what I can say is not only are the Summerlands somewhere in the Labyrinth, but I think Richard did a great job describing them in more detail than we've ever seen, right?
Yeah, I did a fair bit on the Summerlands in there, and I put a realm in the Summerlands in Cost and Crowns as well. So I love the
Right.
Summerlands. I personally don't think they're on the bottom of Midgard. I think they're a fairy realm elsewhere that you reach through, where the sort of reality blurs and you kind of cross over into it without realizing, or maybe you jump into a mill pond. And
I'm sure that
and
the
swim
Fae
down.
will encourage, though, the fact that, oh no, we're right there on the other side of
Yeah,
reality. If you think
exactly.
that, oh yeah, absolutely, we're so close, you guys.
We're so close.
Yeah.
Well, and this is something too. I mean, Wolfgang and I wrote, Book of Ebb and Tides, which was taking on this kind of question for the Shadow Realms, which is like the parallel world. And I think we've done a lot in this setting too, to like really fortify, right, the role of both these Fey realms and give you a little bit more hopefully just playability, right, of where they are.
One of the villainous factions has its headquarters in the Shadow Realm.
Yes. So we've spread out the hooks evenly throughout the Labyrinth. You can't walk through it without getting caught by a story somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
I do want to ask, Celeste, you've preached and preached and preached about your love for your brainchild, the Mechanist. We all know it. We all love it. Lord knows the chat won't shut up about it. And I can't blame them because I freaking love that class. Are we going to see any Mechanist content within the Labyrinth Worldbook?
I mean, I don't know if Wolfgang's could be bad that I'm about to say this, but we have at least one subclass for every single base class coming in the Labyrinth.
At least one, guys.
At least one for every single, including
huge
the Mechanist.
Expansion, and I think there's even a subclass in the stretch goals somewhere.
Mm-hmm. So that's why I say at least, because it could even be more than.
Could be more. Amazing. Thank you. That question has literally been asked by everyone. I think I saw it like 5 or 6 separate times.
It's a big chapter. I promise you're gonna love it.
Amazing. We're coming up on the hour mark here, so I'm gonna ask one last question. We've talked about all of the amazing player options. We've gotten to dive into some of the monsters, the name locations. One thing I do want to ask, because with how long this book has had to cook, and we've talked about how amazing it is that we've gotten to tie a lot of the player options to the factions, how deep do the faction rivalries run, is a question from Rocket Steve.
That's a good one. I think we went a little back and forth on this, but my take, others can disagree, is the heroic factions mostly get along. They have 4 different answers to the problem of how do we keep, how do we keep the void from the door? How do we keep the labyrinth operational? How do we keep the passageways functional? Villainous factions, at least to my read, are pretty much at each other's throat all the time, or allies of convenience at best. But there's one faction I adore, which is the Infernals. and
They're always on
and
their
it's
side.
they're always on your side. Hi, I'm so happy to meet you. I'm from the Hells. No, it's not like that, right? And they're the worst, smarmiest, will sell you anything group, and no matter what you need, they are happy to provide it. And I don't know. For me, that's the ultimate villains are the ones who have absolutely no morality and are willing to sell out everything in the labyrinth to achieve their own ends. And everybody else doesn't hate them. That's the impressive part for me.
Kim says the used car salesman. I think that's exactly it. We have a friendly hell in the core world.
Yes.
We even have a specific monster that is specifically its whole job is just to make your life easier. What do you mean I'm a devil?
It's not a blood contract, it's a feature. Think of what you're getting. Think of the value.
The contract protects you as well as me. It's all good.
I so want the Infernals to show up in a bunch of adventures by freelancers and at convention games and in people's home stuff, because they're just hilariously smarmy car salesmen, and everyone sees right through them, right? But that's part of the fun.
Now they have magic, so they're even scarier.
Yes.
All right. Final question. Celeste, I got to ask the amazing question about the Mechanist, and as you saw, Shao went ballistic. This is another question that's been asked 5 or 6 times. Witches. We saw the Witch class in Deep Magic 2, and then promptly we announced, hey, by the way, we're making a game. I don't know if you know about that. But people are asking about witches within the labyrinth. They're asking about witches in general. Can we speak to any of maybe the lore of witches within the labyrinth and or the player options of witch in the future?
Well, the fun thing about Tales of the Valiant is you can really use anything that has existed or been created for 5e. And the fun of the Labyrinth setting is that you can slot in anything based on the world or how you want to interact with it, and I think there is going to be a huge opportunity, witches make a lot of sense from whatever perspective, whether you're going for more of a primal perspective, right, like linked to the old ring, or whether you want to go more weird with it, right, and make them servants of the void. So I will say I don't think a setting book is traditionally a great place for a new base class. But I promise you guys, if you like The Witch, you're going to be so excited for the future of TOV. And that's all I'll say. Which might even be too much.
I can hear you zipping your mouth shut. It's hard not to talk about.
I knew that Celeste could be political about the answer, and so that's why I threw it out.
As a Kana witch myself.
Yes, as the captain of witches, some would say. Amazing. Thank you guys so much for joining us. I'll just give us a round table once more, and then we'll go ahead and we'll call it a day here in the Labyrinth. My name is Zach Newville. I am the community manager here at Kobold Press. My pronouns are he, they. Thank you so much for joining us. Wolfgang, would you like to...
Hey, I'm Wolfgang Bauer, founder of Kobold Press, and I guess the crazy fool who laid the original stones of the Labyrinth, but couldn't have done it without.
Hey, once again, my name is Celeste Konowich, she, her. I am the senior game designer at Kobold Press and the villain behind much of this book. So I hope you like it. My own villainous faction. Thank you.
And I'm Richard Green. I'm a freelance designer at Kobold Press.
Thank you so much for joining us, guys. This has been the Labyrinth Kickstarter Discord AMA. We are so excited to launch this Kickstarter campaign and bring all of the amazing awesomeness that is the Labyrinth to you. Thank you so much, and we will be seeing you within a world within the Labyrinth. Bye-bye!
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, bye.